Hello, Dental Team listeners. This is Kiera, and today I am so excited to be having one of my favorite guests here today with us, Paul Edwards. He is the CEO and founder of CEDR, my favorite dental HR company, and I am so jazzed because there have been some things like roaming in politics, roaming around this globe, that I felt like Paul would be the best one to bring on the podcast and kind of shed some light on what should employers be looking at, what can we be doing to keep ourselves protected. So, Paul, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Kiera, you are so full of energy. I'm good. I'm good, and I'm excited to kind of do a little HR nerding today on your podcast. This is thanks for inviting us. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. When I heard some of the things coming to the table, I just thought, gosh, I've got to reach out to Paul. We've got to have some fun geeking because HR is not my specialty and that is definitely your specialty. And so wanting to just make sure that we really dove into this. So the reason I reached out to Paul, if you guys haven't heard, we definitely have linked other podcasts for you guys. So be sure to check them out. Paul and I have been on the podcast a few times. CEDR is the #1 recommended HR dental company I refer all the time because Paul, you guys just make people's lives so much easier. I have offices that use you and they're like, I'm so grateful for CEDR. And kudos to your guys' newsletters. Like I click on every newsletter you guys send out because the topics are so relevant. So if people don't know about CEDR before we kick into this, I just like, Paul, can you tell them a little bit about who CEDR is so they can get those newsletters as well? And then we're going to dive into some juicy political topics that are on the HR ballot today.
Oh yeah. Okay. So for everybody out there, CEDR, CEDR Solutions, you can find our website. If you go to our website and you input your name into one of the forms, what you end up doing is putting yourself into our education community. So unlike other companies where you start getting phone calls and everybody's trying to sell you something, we'd love to have you as a client, but as a precursor to that, if you're just out there and you want HR education, we want you in our community. And that's what you're talking about, Kiera. The reason why you like those newsletters is because we have 3,000 members across the entire country, and they're asking us they're asking us to help them solve these HR problems. And so we use those questions to create our roundups because they're literally and actually what's going on in the world today. So, what we do for our members is we provide you two components. Compliance. So when you have a problem with an employee, almost any problem, there's some kind of law, rule, or regulation that probably regulates what you can and can't do. And they can be everything from local, county, city, and it goes all the way up to the feds. So we can help you solve a problem taking two looks at it. The first look is compliance. What does the law say we have to do? And the second thing is what we call the human side, which is we're working with human beings. And, you can call a lawyer and say, what would I do about this? And they'd say, fire her. But that lawyer doesn't have any experience of what it's like to replace her, to train her, to lose all of your investment in somebody. And so we take that very human approach, and we have a group of experts here who get on the phone with you through email. We have all kinds of resources, and we help you solve your HR problems.
Absolutely. They're incredible. It's like, what do I do when my employee wants to take overtime, or if my employee didn't show up? Or I feel like your guys' education is so telling. I can tell you got your audience very dialed in. And it's very informative. And truly, my office managers and doctors who use CEDR feel so confident in being able to make decisions versus offices who don't have you in their back pocket. They're like, Kiera, what are we supposed to do? And I'm like, this is where you check into your state laws. You reach out to your lawyer because every state is different. So that's why I just am obsessed about you guys. I think you guys do an incredible service for the dental community. So massive thanks and appreciation. So definitely recommend everybody getting that educational resource because I just think it helps you, even things that you might not be thinking about. I think you guys do a great job of spurring and educating, which hopefully today's podcast also does. So
that's exactly what we're going to do today.
Right. So what I reached out to you originally was this whole NDA thing came up of what's going to happen if the NDA bill passes, and an NDA is a non-disclosure, and then there's the non-competes as well. What happens with doctors, especially with associates, being able to go and work for practices that are so close to them? And so I just wanted to reach out. I know this one's actually going to not be our juiciest topic for you guys. We have a juicier one coming. But Paul, if you could kind of just shed some light on what does that look like? Where does that kind of stand in legislation? And what should practices know about this?
So the FTC wrote a rule that wanted to get rid of ostensibly get rid of all non-competes. I mean, there were a
Hmm.
few that could survive, but they ostensibly wanted to get rid of them, and their stated reason was that it was tamping down employees' abilities to be mobile, to be able to change jobs, to move someplace else. And not a terrible argument, but not a good overall general argument. So predictably, that rule was challenged in both a Florida court and I think two Texas courts. I'll just cut to the chase, everybody. The judges involved in those cases the ones in Texas put a stay on it, which means, for legalese wise, that just means they put a big pause button on it and said, the parties involved, including the federal government, are going to have to come back and argue some more in favor of this. And we kind of could see that that's what was going to happen, and that's what happened. So,
Hmm.
based on some recent Supreme Court rulings and stuff that's going on out there in the world, in the legal world, this thing has been paused, and I don't see it unpausing for months, possibly years, and maybe, Kiera, never.
Yeah,
So it's
which
just it's not a thing anymore.
which is such a great thing. And again, when I reached out to you, our schedules couldn't quite align for us to
Mhm.
get there. And it was like really hot. And I know a lot of doctors were concerned about that
We were
because
freaking out.
agreed.
Yeah.
Everybody
Yeah.
was like, this is going to be very impactful because the reality is, I don't think any employer truly wants to hurt. I mean, I'm sure there's some out there, but
Mhm.
generally the dentists, they don't want to prevent other doctors from being able to go get another job. That's not what it is. But what
Nope.
they don't want to do is set their practice up to where all those patients could be pulled very easily to another
Right.
location, because that's really like that doctor who hired these associates took the risk, and they don't want to have the greatest asset of that practice's patient base being able
That
to be lifted out. And I think
that's
that that's where the argument's at.
Yeah, that's precisely correct. And really, it was going to be damaging. And since it's not going into effect, we don't have to go too far into it. But it was really going to be damaging in ways that the federal government didn't understand.
Sure.
Or didn't seem to perceive. They could have written a different kind of rule and put a lot more limits on it. And by the way, non competes are very limiting. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of limits, and some states won't let you have them. So other states that will let you have them say you have to have these specific provisions in them. It can't be too broad. It can't be designed to punish someone for leaving.
Mm-hmm.
You put 30 miles in your non-compete, and you're in downtown Chicago, and your non-compete's
Right.
probably going to become invalid. But you
Mm-hmm.
put 4 blocks, and that'd be a different story. So, like
Absolutely.
all things, and I'll bring it all the way back to HR, the details matter, right?
Mm-hmm.
It really matters. So, but
For
for
sure.
now, we don't have to worry about this.
Which is great. And that's really what I wanted to bring you on, because I know it was really hot and it was really
Hmm.
scary, and it was, what are we going to do? And that's where I like to have this podcast be up and coming. And so, Paul, there actually are a few other things that I do think are really going to
Hmm.
impact that people should be aware of. And that's this 1099 world, hygienists, associate doctors, like
Yep.
kind of this world, which I think strategy wise from the business's standpoint is it's hard to hire. It's
Yep.
hard to hire right now. It's been hard to hire since I think 2020. I think all of us are still feeling that. And so I don't blame employers for trying to get creative and think outside the box. However, with that asterisk, uh, legalities and payroll and how we hire can really truly impact a practice and do some pretty serious damage if not done correctly. I've seen some class action lawsuits, I've seen big lawsuits. 1099s and misclassification of employees is a very big deal. So, Paul, this is your world bigger than it is mine. I just have a very strict lawyer on me. So, that's the only reason that I know, because I used to do it pre COVID. We were
Hmm.
in a 1099 world. And I remember my lawyer called me and he said, Kiera, you're welcome to do whatever you want to do. He said,
That's
but I
such a
just want you to
lawyer
know.
thing to say.
He said, I just want you to know that this can become a federal offense on you if
Hmm.
it goes. And I was like, so I draw the line. I'm cool to stay in gray, but I'm not okay to go to federal prison. So that's
Yeah.
like where I draw lines. But Paul, please, not to scare anybody, but to educate
Yeah.
about where this can come into fact and how can especially employers protect themselves in this world.
Well, look, the first thing that I want to tell everybody is that you might not know this, but I think you might know it. But I'm going to put it for you in kind of stark terms. As the employer, it is your responsibility for you to classify your workers properly. They really don't get, your employees, your prospective employees, don't get to make that decision. They cannot make that decision for you. And so there's a set of rules. There's two sets of rules, actually. The IRS has a set of rules. They call it the test. And the Department of Labor has a set of rules. And
Mm-hmm.
incidentally, they call theirs the test too. And if you put the two rules up with all of the little things in the test, and there's many, many bullet points in each test that says, if this is true, if this is true, if this is
Mm-hmm.
not true, and you go through the whole thing, there's a lot of crossover talk there. So that's, I guess, to some degree, it's beneficial.
Sure.
But what I do want to say to everybody is that if you use the test or don't use the test, whatever you do, if you violate this rule that we're talking about, you are both committing tax, you can be committing tax fraud, and you can also be breaking the law when it comes to the Department of Labor. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's a kind of a double whammy. And here's the important part, Kiera, is that you're leaving a paper trail behind that you cannot defeat. So this
Absolutely.
isn't a he said, she said, you can't claim I didn't do it. But, if you get it wrong and you misclassify someone as an independent contractor, that means you're not paying the workers' comp. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a problem. That's unlawful underneath your state laws because you misclassified them. Doesn't matter to the state. You still broke the law. You're not paying their matching Social Security. You're not paying withholding and paying taxes. And again, you're not paying your portion of the Social Security. So, why this matters to both the feds and the state is this is taxable income and you are
Right.
not paying it. And you are actually, you are gaining some small advantage. I maintain it's not enough for you to get this wrong. And you're also helping you're costing the state and the feds because the person who's misclassified is writing things off that employees cannot write off. So they're
Absolutely.
acting as if they're in their own business. So what we found is that we get a lot. We've got a lot of hygienists who have come to the practice. Now they may come by themselves. They may come be offered up by a temp agency who's not getting this correct. They will come to the practice and say, "I want to be paid. I want to be paid as an independent contractor." And what
Yep.
they're saying is if you're paying me $75 an hour, I want $75 an hour to be given to me. And
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't work when we look at what the rules are with regards to classifying people, Kara. So, any questions so far? And I,
Yeah, I think something I've also felt that there's a fun game in, and I think if we think of it as a game as opposed to like stressful, I enjoy
Mhm.
that a little bit more. These classifications actually do change quite a lot, and like what the IRS is sticky on or not sticky on, I do feel also changes because this 1099 world, I understand. Like if you look at people's motives, the hygienists want to get paid more. They want to be able to take home more salary. So
Mhm.
I understand completely why they're wanting to do it. But again, my lawyer, he told me very well. He said, Kiera, the definition of a 1099 is like a gardener that comes to your house or a lawn care crew.
That's a
They
good way
tell
to
you the
describe it.
day, they bring their own tools, they don't use any of yours, and they tell you the fee that you're going to be paying for that service. He
Yep.
said, now if you have an employee that's doing anything different than that, or you have someone who's different than that, most likely they're probably not a 1099. And so that's kind of helped me. I just think about this gardener or lawn care crew,
It's good.
because I feel like it really makes it very simple for me of where am I going to be? And honestly, like you said, Paul, I don't think employers realize the implications if you get this wrong. It is
Mhm.
big because we have looked, and I think this will also tie into like exempt and non exempt employees too. But we also
Yep.
have to look at the IRS and the federal and the state reasons why they're doing this too. Yes, we should be classifying correctly because everybody right now, with inflation and costs and whatnot, people are getting smarter and stickier with making sure we're following the laws and the rules. So
That's
I
true.
think looking for motives and reasons, but really, I don't know. I enjoy sleeping at night as an employer, and I think this is a great way to help yourself stay out of it. So,
Well,
not necessarily questions, but definitely, I think it's a big issue and an easy way to determine that hygienist is not bringing their own tools with them. They're not setting the hours that they're going to be working. They could be telling you the pay they're going to be getting, yes, but they're really not coming, doing their thing, and leaving. You're providing the patients for them. You're providing the instruments for them. You're providing the chair for them. You're providing the team for them. They're working within the hours of your practice. They're really not. Now, I think someone who is an independent contractor, for a contrast, is like if an anesthesiologist is coming to the practice, they're bringing their own tools, they're bringing their own equipment, they usually bring their own team.
Kiera,
They're coming.
have you been reading my blog? Because
I I just think I'm very passionate about this stuff because I think employers who get it wrong, this is where we get into hot water
yep.
unintentionally trying to save a few bucks that's going to ultimately cost us a lot in the long run. And I think again, analogies always make my life easier. So that's probably why I do it.
No, no, that's a very good example that you gave. And so the first example of the gardener is a very good example. I'm going to reiterate. This guy or gal shows up at your house, they can experience a profit and a loss. So if their lawnmower breaks down, they don't come knock on your door and ask for you to do something about it. They go and they fix their lawnmower. So they have an opportunity for profit and loss. That's one thing. The
Mm-hmm.
other thing that they measure, adding a little technical to this, is the degree of permanency. And so you could change, you could choose to, and they could choose to not work for you, and it's likely that they work for several different other companies. But
Right.
I want to make something clear here, because that's what people glom onto, and they're like, "Well, my hygienist works at 2 other dental practices, so I'm
Right.
in the clear." And that's not how this test works. It's just not how the test works. So the main thing and the big piece of news. So here's the big reveal for everyone. We, CEDR, have been around for 19 years now. For 19 years, we have been telling people anyone who tries to classify a hygienist as an independent contractor, that it is not lawful and that there's a problem the IRS has with it. So it's been like this for 18 years. But like you said, they kind of define, redefine, change rules. In this case, they didn't add or take anything away. But what they did is they took one of the things that was on the list, and I'm just going to say it was on it. It was important. It sometimes was used against employers, and the Department of Labor brought it all the way up and said, if you're only going to consider the first 6 points, we want you to know that if the person is doing the work of the business, they cannot be classified as an independent contractor. And so we've always known this determination was there. And the IRS uses that one. So that's one of the ones where the tests are matching up. So if you're in a general dental practice and you have a hygiene department, then they're doing the work of your practice. Your
Yes.
anesthesiology example was a very good example. Now, if it were I mean, I'm just going to split hairs a little bit here. If it were a pediatric practice whereby there's a lot of anesthesia going on, there's always someone there.
Mm-hmm.
That anesthesiologist technically is an employee. They're not an
Agreed.
independent contractor. But if you're out in Montana and you have you do you have a you don't you're a general dentist, you don't do surgery, and you have a surgeon come through to perform surgery, and an anesthesiologist comes with them, or you bring them in as well, those people are not doing the work of your practice, even though we all agree it's all dentistry and it's associated. But hopefully in that description I'm able to kind of relay to you guys what the differences are there. But this big reveal is the extent to which the work performed is integral, and it's an integral part of the potential employer's business is the big one. They moved it way to the top.
Mm-hmm.
So this means technically, literally, hygienists can't be legally um, classified as independent contractors. And it also calls into the thing that we've also been saying for 18 years, that associate doctors who are, it's a general dentist doing general dentistry, that associate doctors they are not independent contractors
Mm-hmm.
either. And that the safest thing to do is to classify them as an employee. And I have lots of other good reasons for making them employees. But again, that's another place where it's common practice. And then, Kiera, I'm going to add one more thing.
Yeah.
State laws apply here. And so there are several states, California, Oregon, Washington, I could go on and on, who have even more strict rules about these classifications. And we've just seen, I don't want to call them all the way out. I'm going to tell you they're in the Northeast. They're in a state where they have stricter rules. Practice is very successful, has multiple associates in it. I think I counted 8, and they got audited and they got lit up. I
And that's
mean,
actually what my follow up was going to be, Paul. Let's
yeah.
say I am a practice and I do get audited and find
Mm-hmm.
out that I misclassified, what is, cause this is how I like to make my decisions. Like, how
Right.
bad is the problem? Is it going to be a slap on the wrist? Am I going
Right.
to jail? Like, where are we at with this?
You are unlikely to go to jail in most states, although there are wage theft laws that can get you charged with
Mhm.
misdemeanors, which is the last thing you need as a licensed professional anywhere. But the problem, okay, the problem is three. I think I'm going to off the top of my head, it's threefold.
Okay.
Um, Kiera, distractions, right? Like we all have plenty of distractions that come in every day just trying to keep the wheels on the bus and everybody happy and the patient's happy. And so there's plenty of things that enter into our sphere of operating all the time. You've never had a distraction like a Department of Labor investigation where they act like the IRS. They issue a letter
Mhm.
which requires you to give up all of your bank records, all of your time records, all of your records and records of your other the distraction to just meet the demand is going to be brutal.
Mhm.
The next thing you have to do consider is the immediate cost. I'm not going to even go long term for the cure. The immediate cost is you're going to just go ahead and just put $30,000 in a lawyer's checking account to
Totally.
represent you so that this doesn't spin up and get completely out of control, and so that you know what you're facing. And then the next thing is what are you going to have to do once the determination is made? And if it's made against you, what will you have to pay in back taxes, penalties, and all those things? So this can easily ramp up, and distraction and, all of these costs that I've talked about. I don't want to be hyperbolic here, but this can easily get to $100,000
Mhm.
very, very quickly. And so nobody wants that. Nobody wants these distractions or these things. So the penalty, the 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 punishment really can be fairly brutal. And the
Mhm.
last thing let's just say you only made, yeah, let's just say you've only misclassified one person, right? And she has or he has filed a complaint or somehow it's gotten back to you. You're still in time producing all of those records, answering the complaint, hiring a lawyer. You're still going to spend 25, 30, $40,000 to cure this one instance because again, you're going to have to get a lawyer.
For
So
sure.
to me, that person would have to work for you for like 30 years to make that money worth it for you. And that's just not what's going to happen. So
Absolutely. I
um,
think them coming in as independent contractors clearly shows that. And I think about like what's my risk to reward. So what I'm doing by having an independent contractor is they're getting paid more with air quotes. They're writing things off,
yep,
but I'm not having to pay my payroll tax on them per se.
yep.
Like I think that's really the only benefit to an employer to do this. Maybe I don't have to have like the exempt, the non-exempt, the hours,
Mhm.
but those are things that are pretty easy to solve. So I'm like, okay. And typically I know this is like very loose math, Paul. And if you disagree with me, please, I am not offended. Say it is. You're the expert here. I've been told that payroll tax, like a good estimate, is just 10% of that person's
It's not bad.
annual.
That's
So
good.
that's where I'm like easy because 10% for me is very easy to move that decimal
Yep.
point and I can figure it out. So if the person's making, say, let's say they're making 70,000 a year, it's $7,000 that I'm going to be adding additional in payroll tax to it. To me, is that 7,000 worth the 100,000? But also I think, Paul, there is the emotional ROI on it too, like to
Oh,
go
it's
through
brutal.
that. It might not financially destroy you, but mentally it's something. And if I mean, I've gone through lawsuits and it's something where you get to a point where you just say, I will do whatever to get out of
That's
this,
right.
because the pain and the exhaustion and trying to fight it and trying to win, but then you also don't want to admit to it because like opening it up, you open yourself up to them looking back at every single person in your
Hmm.
world. And to me, those things are not worth the risk, which is why I wanted you on here today. Is let's not be afraid, but let's be proactive. But Paul, my question I think is for people who might be freaking out right now of, oh my gosh, Paul, I've misclassified.
Right,
What
right.
do I do today? Like, do I have to go back and like go to the Pope and like redeem myself that way? Like, how do I fix it moving forward if I have possibly misclassified in the past?
Well, it's a case by case basis, and you open up a little bit of a Pandora's box when you realize that you have to fix something. And your questions are very viable. Like, do I have to go back a certain number of years? What do I have to do? One of the things I tell a lot of our members who are freaking out over something like this is like, let's look at the actual pain point here. like how much will it cost to correct this, and is, do we have the money, and is it too much? So it's a case by case basis, and what you need to do is kind of stop, you just take a breath and go and talk to someone who knows what they're doing. It's typically at some point, this is going to involve an attorney or a very good CPA. It's not your accountant. It's not anybody else. It's not even CEDR. We cannot settle this for you. We can give you all this guidance and everything, but we can't go to bat for you. So you have to find that resource, and they're out there. They're all over the place, and you want to mitigate it to the best that you can. You're probably going to self-report it. And look, I've seen it everywhere along the spectrum, Kiera, from they've been doing it wrong for 3 years and they have a hygiene department of 7 people, to I've only had a hygienist for 2 years and I misclassified her and she's still with me and I got to fix this. I've
Mhm.
seen the whole spectrum, and there's 2 different approaches to that. And so if you're freaking out, I'm sorry, but it's better to have the knowledge, not have it at all. You're going to seek out. First thing you're going to do is go to your CPA and talk to them. And what you're also going to do is, if you're out there and you've got a CPA and they know that you're doing this, um,
Mhm.
I don't love that. I don't love that. That's why I always say, when we're talking to professionals, I get them put stuff in writing.
Yep.
I need to be able to rely on the guidance that I'm getting, and then rely on that attorney who is an expert in taxes, who is an expert with the Department of Labor, who knows everything about it. Then rely on them or that CPA firm to help get you through it, and then just go through the process and get it all cleaned up, and then fix it going forward.
Absolutely. And I will put it out there, if anybody is looking for good attorneys, I do really, really have an incredible attorney who is right in a line with CEDR. So please reach out, hello at thedentallyteam.com. But
Mm-hmm.
really, I agree with you, Paul. I think it's one of those things of, I understand that people weren't doing it. Like, don't beat yourself up. You were not intentionally
No.
trying to be bad or do things or skirt the law. Like, you really were making the best decisions at the time. But today we know better. So let's do better. Let's fix it. Let's clean it up. Let's talk to the experts. That way you can feel confident moving forward. But it's like, we know today that this is not okay. And let's make the decisions, because you might skirt by, but every business is going to be sued at some point, and they're also going to be audited at some point. And I would rather have my house as clean as I can get it, and hopefully they find minimal, as opposed to hoping that I never get audited. I really do hope I never get audited, but I like to prepare and plan as if I were to be audited. That way I can sleep at night, I can make these corrections, and that's how I live my life. And so, Paul, I just love this. I think there is one thing that we will put out there. We won't exactly say all the pieces, but we were talking earlier about misclassifying of this exempt and non-exempt. And I've seen it even within our company.
Mm-hmm.
Non-exempt definitions have actually shifted. I had no clue that some of the definitions had shifted from when I last did a thorough research on it.
Mm-hmm.
How often do these change, and how do we keep ourselves current, other than working with you, which I think that's
Well,
the greatest thing? But how do we
well,
keep ourselves current? Because exempt and non-exempt's coming up.
Okay, so what you want to do is, really, if you get into someone's, like if you get into our ecosystem of education, so you don't have to be paying us anything. We are always talking about these things, and we are giving that information. We're not withholding and keeping that behind a paywall. So that you want to join someone like us in our community so you can get updates on this. Ironically, the rules don't change that much for this status, but they are changing right now. And I
Mm-hmm.
do expect that over the next 4 years, we're going to see some other changes. But they basically will burrow down into the regulation, and they'll make some kind of a change to, like, a minimum salary amount or some other thing. And that's all. That's very simple. This
Mm-hmm.
is this is cut and dry. This is one of those great reasons to have someone like us, because we do understand the rules. But yeah, that's another area where people are getting misclassified. And again, this goes back, Carrie, to the first couple of minutes. It's your job as the employer to know these things, and then to apply these things in the proper way to your people who you're paying salary, or who you're paying as an independent contractor, or whatever.
Absolutely. And Paul, I'm so glad that you brought that up, because for me as a business owner, I think it's absolutely fun to run a business and to own a business. And I
I
call
do
it my
too.
creative playground.
I
Like, it's
love
fun,
it.
right?
I love it.
But there's also all these pieces that I have to remember are my responsibility. And at the end of the day, it's going to fall on me as the
Hmm.
business owner, which is why I am very passionate about finding the experts in the areas that I'm not as strong. I am not a guru on HR. I am not a guru on my bookkeeping. I am not a guru on tax. I'm not a guru on the legals. We are in multiple different states in our company. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know that. And so having a good board of advisors to make sure that you are there. Like I messaged my CPA because I saw that there's this like weird thing that came up for one of my pieces. And I'm like, I don't even know what this is. Is this a scam? I messaged him and he said, Kiera, don't worry. We already have this. You're either filed or you'll be filed in the next month. And I thought,
I know
that's
what
the
that
people.
is.
Well,
I know
tell
it.
tell
Yep.
Paul. I was like, what the heck is this? Is this a scam? It's like DBLI or something weird
Yep.
like that. And I was like, what does that even mean?
Yep. Yep. I,
So really
yeah.
have the people in your corner. And I think CEDR, just so you guys know what we're referring to of this exempt and non-exempt, that's salary versus hourly, definitely reach out to CEDR because it does impact a lot of office managers. So doctors, I would really encourage you just to reach out. Paul is more than happy to share and help you guys. I intentionally asked him not to put it on the podcast because I did not want to put any doctors in an uncomfortable spot, knowing that team members do listen to this podcast. And I wanted doctors, you to know the information, therefore you could actually make the decisions best for your practice rather than exposing you. So that's why we're not trying to hold back information, but I know our audience. And so I said, Paul, let's let them know. Let's have them reach out to you. That way, doctors, you can make sure that you're getting the information and make the best decision for your practice.
Yep. Get into our ecosystem and you're going to see the education pop up here in about 3 weeks, which isn't enough time for you to understand what the rules and how the rules are changing. I'm also on my podcast. I'm going to cover this at least once before the end of the year. So I'm going to spend some time on my podcast doing that.
Which is amazing. So, Paul, you really went through the gamut with us today of going from what is this non-compete and how's it going to impact us to now the 1099s and what that really is and how we classify, misclassify, and what do we do to now talking about this exempt, non-exempt. And really, I think more than anything, I feel education is power. Yes, sometimes I don't like the nuances. Sometimes it feels annoying, but I'd rather be annoyed and fix it than be uneducated and not know and then be burned through an audit. So, Paul, I love what you guys do. I love the care that you have. I love the passion that you have. People like you are who get me excited because I don't like HR. I would rather like never
Out.
think about HR. It's the yuckiest part of a business. And
Yeah.
so the
Yep. It
fact
is.
that there's great people like you out there,
We're going to
I just
put
want to
that
say
on our.
thank you.
We're putting that on our website. It's the yuckiest part of your business. Let us help you with that. Yeah, we're the
It is.
solution you didn't know you needed. That's going to be our.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, Paul, once again, thank you for being here. And for those who are like obviously are going to reach out again, please, if you will just share how they can connect with you, get into your ecosystem, learn, and if they're interested in becoming a client as well, how they can connect with you that
Okay.
way.
So two different ways to connect with us and with me personally. The first way is to go to our site, CEDR Solutions with an S on the end, and just sign up on one of the forums and join our community and get the free education. Of course, give us a call if you're looking for services. The other way is just subscribe to my podcast. It's called What the Hell Just Happened. You can find it on all the platforms. What the hell just happened here is some rules changed, and we discussed it with Kiera. Go subscribe to my podcast, and weekly we put out stuff and we talk about HR related things and some other fun stuff. And Kiera, well, this is definitely a subject that I'm going to cover before the end of the year.
Amazing. All of you get prepared. There's no reason to be fearful. There's great resources out there. Yes, this is, in my opinion, success has two parts of it. There is the suck part of success. It's literally the first three letters of success. This is the portion that we have to do as business owners and know. But I think, Paul, you guys do an amazing job of making it not scary, very easy. You guys are incredible at education. So all of you get prepared, go connect with them, reach out, listen to their podcast. Truly incredible, incredible information. And Paul, thanks for being here today with me.
Kiera, thank you so much.
Of course. And thank all of you for listening. And I'll catch you next time on the Dental Team Podcast.